What's up guys, Asian here again with another PTS video, and today we're going to be going over the Maelstrom Dual Wield. Their one patch reign, unfortunately, has been over just because of the way that ZOS has decided to nerf all the single target dots. But there might be a silver lining here, even though Maelstrom Dual Wield has seen an indirect nerf with all the changes to dot damage. They're still not a terrible set to run. However, there are of course some weaknesses of running a Maelstrom Dual Wield build, so we'll be going over that as well. But really the point of this video is just to kind of highlight the DPS disparity between the most DPS you can pull with like a two-hander build and comparing that to the Maelstrom Dual Wield build. Of course, DPS is obviously going to be lower across the board just because of the dot changes. That much hasn't changed at all. It's just a matter of how good does the Maelstrom Dual Wield now stack up, both to your typical Dual Wield build as well as a what looks to be the more meta two-handed builds in Dragonhold. So, for those of you guys who are not aware, the Maelstrom Dual Wield, let me quickly go ahead and do something like this, there you go. The Maelstrom Dual Wield set has a special kind of set effect called Cruel Flurry. This has been changed a few times in the past. Currently, however, whenever you deal damage with Flurry or any of its morphs, so Rapid Strikes or Bloodthirst, your single target damage over time abilities used within 4 seconds gain 1000 spell and weapon damage. So the Maelstrom Dual Wield actually used to be fairly strong way back in the day. This is before even Homestead came out, before even Morrowind came out. Maelstrom Dual Wield actually was the meta for stamina DPS. Unfortunately, back in those days, stamina DPS were not the meta DPS. It was a lot more Magicka Sorcerers, Magicka Templars, Magicka DKs. Back in those days, Magicka DPS was a lot stronger back then. And then, ever since Morrowind has come out, the Maelstrom Dual Wield has kind of been left on the wayside, mostly because in Morrowind, with sustain changes, the Maelstrom Dual Wield wasn't no longer sustainable. It wasn't really sustainable to use Flurry anymore because they upped the cost and they also nerfed sustain, and it's kind of been that way back and forth up until Scalebreaker, when single target dots were buffed by a very large amount, making the Maelstrom Dual Wield very powerful. They then decided to change the Cruel Flurry set. So it used to be you had to use Flurry and then a dot and then Flurry again to empower each dot. Then they changed it so that they cut the actual weapon damage that you get out of it in half, so you get 1000 versus 2000 before Scalebreaker, but instead, whenever you use Flurry at all, any damage over time abilities you use, single target, used within 4 seconds, gain the half that weapon damage. So there's a bit of a trade-off there that kind of balance out how strong the Maelstrom Dual Wield was, and it did actually bring down the strength of the Maelstrom Dual Wield in Scalebreaker. But in Scalebreaker, because of the strength of single target dots, the Maelstrom Dual Wield still remains to be one of the strongest, if not the strongest, single target DPS setup in ideal conditions. Obviously, the key word there is ideal conditions. So the Maelstrom Dual Wield build is contingent on being able to use the Flurry ability, so Rapid Strikes in most instances. Rapid Strikes does require you to be within range of the boss, plus it is a channel ability, so during that entire channel time, you do need to be within range of the boss that whole time. So even though it's 0.6 seconds, if the boss decides to move away in the middle of the channel, your channel isn't going to be completed. The good thing with the Maelstrom set is that if you go ahead and take a look here, you see you have to complete an entire channel of Flurry in order to get the Cruel Flurry buff. So if the boss decides to move away, you can't get the Cruel Flurry buff. So for more mobile fights, it's a lot more difficult to sort of maintain that Cruel Flurry buff, even in Scalebreaker. If you're able to maintain that Cruel Flurry buff, then it has the potential to out DPS basically a lot of different setups here. However, it does pull toe-to-toe with Marsalok in those sort of ideal conditions, so a lot of people have been just using the Maelstrom Dual Wield just because you don't have to worry about bash weaving Marsalok that way. That being said, because of that limitation, mainly the fact that you have to stay within melee range to get that channel off, a lot of meta DPS instead just run Marsalok with Lokkestiiz front bar, although the Maelstrom Dual Wield does again pull toe-to-toe in ideal conditions. But in Dragonhold, with the nerf to all the dot abilities, we'll find that the Maelstrom Dual Wield has lost a lot of strength, and that's just because the dots themselves have gotten a lot weaker. So, here is the Parse. Oh, that's not the Parse. This is the Parse with the Rapid Strikes with the Maelstrom Dual Wield, so 5-piece Reliquant, 5-piece Lokkestiiz. And the single target dots that we're going to be taking a look at are mainly going to be poison injection, barbed trap, and rending slashes. So you can see here with poison injection, our max hit was 20.6k, and if you compare that to a typical dual wield build where we pulled a higher DPS, poison injection pulled 21.4k here. So you can see that Maelstrom Dual Wield not doing that great. So again, poison injection dot 20.6 versus the 21.4 here with the dual wield, and then with the two-handed build 20.4. So you can see that the Maelstrom Dual Wield isn't actually helping that much in terms of poison injection. What about barbed trap? 12.1 is our max here with the Maelstrom Dual Wield, and over here 11.1, and with the two-handed 10.8. So you can see here that although the Maelstrom Dual Wield is helping out a little bit here and there, it's not really making that big of a difference in terms of max hits, and that's just because the nerf to all the single target dots just makes it not very powerful anymore. So you can see here 80.4 compared to the traditional two-handed build. So this is two-handed front bar Lokkestiiz with Veladreth as our monster helm set, pulling 83.3, and then our two-handed set here, so Lokkestiiz battle axe on the front bar here, pulled 85k. So you're taking a look at about a 5k difference here between the max. Between a typical dual wield build, probably around a 3k difference, which is, in some senses, it is significant. It is greater than 5% difference overall. 3k DPS difference, that is. 5k is obviously a little bit over 5%. So it's definitely what I would call noticeable. If you can see the times here, 421 compared to 412 compared to 407, you will notice that difference there. I mean, just with the 85k parse, you're already taking a look at a difference of about 14 seconds or so. So if you multiply that out among 8 DPS, you're missing out a lot on DPS if you're using the Maelstrom Dual Wield. So unfortunately, looks like in Dragonhold, Maelstrom Dual Wield's not going to be that hot anymore. Still not terrible. 80.4k is still pretty decent, but the fact that you could just swap over to a two-handed build and get another 5k more DPS, at least on a stamp sword, it kind of, doesn't really sell it too much. But that concludes this video. Hopefully you guys found this informative, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.